I never thought my wedding day would turn into the most humiliating experience of my life. The moment that was supposed to be the happiest day I'd ever lived through became the one that broke me into pieces. And it all started with a secret I wasn't supposed to find out. Subscribe and tell me in the comments what you would do if you were in my shoes. Everything looked perfect that morning. The church was decorated with white roses, the music was soft and elegant, and all of our friends and family were arriving, smiling, and congratulating us. I looked at my bride from a distance, and she looked stunning in her dress. But behind that beauty, there was something else. Something I couldn't shake off. It wasn't just nerves. It was the way she avoided looking at me directly, the way her bridesmaids whispered behind her back. At first, I told myself it was just pre-wedding jitters. But deep down, something in my gut told me I was about to walk into the biggest mistake of my life. And then, just minutes before the ceremony, I overheard something that made my blood run cold. One of her bridesmaids whispered to another, "I can't believe she's still going through with this after what happened last night." Last night? What happened last night? My hands started shaking. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear the organ music. In that moment, I realized my wedding day was not going to end the way I had always dreamed. But I had no idea just how explosive the truth really was. The first real crack in the picture-perfect image came a week before the wedding, during her bachelorette party. I wasn't supposed to know much about it, just a night out with her friends, some drinks, dancing, the usual. But the way she came home that night set off alarms in my head. She stumbled through the door at nearly 4 a.m., her makeup smudged, her phone clutched tightly in her hand like she was guarding it with her life. Normally, she was the type who told me everything. But this time? Silence. She barely even looked at me, just mumbled something about being tired and went straight to bed. The next morning, her phone buzzed on the nightstand while she was in the shower. I normally don't snoop, but something in me told me to look. The message preview was from her maid of honor, and it read, "Can't believe he almost saw us. Last night was wild." My stomach dropped. What did that mean? Who almost saw them? Saw them doing what? I didn't open the full message. I knew if I did, she'd know I had crossed a line. So instead, I pretended everything was fine. But from that moment on, I couldn't unsee the way her friends looked at me. Their polite smiles felt forced, their eyes darted away whenever I joined the conversation. It was like they were all sharing a secret that I was never meant to know. And the worst part? I had no proof. Just suspicion. But suspicion alone can eat you alive, and it was starting to consume me. Still, I told myself, "You're overthinking. It's nothing. She loves you." I wanted to believe it. I needed to believe it. But that illusion wouldn't last long. Because the whispers only got louder. A few days later, I was at the tuxedo shop picking up my suit when I ran into one of her cousins. He congratulated me, but then he hesitated. He looked like he wanted to say something but held back. I laughed it off, thinking maybe it was nothing. But then he muttered under his breath, almost too quietly to catch, "Man. If you only knew." I froze. "What do you mean?" I asked, my chest tightening. He immediately backpedaled, forcing a laugh and saying, "Nothing, man, nothing. Just wedding nerves, you know." Then he left quickly, like he couldn't get away fast enough. That phrase stuck in my head like poison. If you only knew. Knew what? Knew who? I kept replaying it in my head, over and over. That night, I confronted my fiancée casually. I told her I had bumped into her cousin. She went pale for just a second, barely noticeable, but I caught it. She brushed it off, saying, "He's always dramatic, don't take him seriously." But the seed of doubt had already been planted. From then on, I started noticing the cracks. She was suddenly protective of her phone, turning it face down every time she set it on the table. She started taking late-night calls with her mom, but when I passed by, her voice would lower to a whisper. And then, one evening, I heard her laughing in the bathroom while on the phone. A soft, intimate laugh I hadn't heard in months. When she came out, I asked who it was. She smiled too quickly and said, "Just my mom." But moms don't usually make you blush like that. My instinct screamed at me to dig deeper. And what I found next was the first undeniable crack in her perfect mask. It finally happened late one night, just 3 days before the wedding. She had fallen asleep on the couch with her phone in her hand. For once, the screen wasn't locked. My chest pounded as I stared at it, torn between doing the right thing and giving into the gnawing suspicion that had been eating me alive for weeks. I picked it up. At first, it was all normal, texts from her mom about flowers, from friends about the big day. But then, buried in a thread with a number not saved in her contacts. I saw it. The messages were short, almost cautious. "Last night was unforgettable. You sure he doesn't suspect? Can't wait to see you again after the wedding." My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone. Who was this? Why wasn't the number saved? And most importantly, why did the messages stop the moment she came home from her bachelorette party? I wanted to scroll up further, but just as I started, she stirred in her sleep. I quickly locked the phone and placed it back in her hand, my heart racing. For the rest of the night, I sat awake, staring at her. She looked so peaceful, so innocent, like someone who could never hurt me. But the words on that screen told a different story. The next morning, I tried to act normal. I kissed her on the forehead, smiled, joked about the wedding countdown. But inside, my world was collapsing. I knew there was someone else. I didn't know who, or how deep it went, but I knew. And as fate would have it, the answer came from the last person I expected, her maid of honor. It was a quiet afternoon, and I had gone over to the venue to check on last-minute decorations. I ran into her maid of honor, Emma, arranging flowers in the hall. She smiled at me, but there was something off, an almost guilty twitch in her eyes. "Hey," I said casually, "everything ready for the big day?" She nodded, but then she said something that made my blood run cold. "I just hope everything goes smoothly. You know, with all the surprises." "Surprises?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. She froze. Her eyes darted away, and for a second, I thought she would tell me. But then she laughed nervously. "Nothing, nothing. Just wedding jitters." That laugh didn't convince me. I could feel my suspicion turning into anger. Emma had always been too close to my fiancé, always whispering secrets in her ear. And now, with a comment like that, I realized she knew something I didn't. Something important. Later that day, I couldn't resist confronting her again. "Emma, what did you mean by surprises?" I asked quietly. She looked like she wanted to vanish into thin air. And then, in a slip of the tongue, she said, "I just hope he doesn't find out before the wedding. It would ruin everything." My heart stopped. Everything? What could possibly ruin everything on the day of our wedding? I walked away pretending I didn't hear it, but my mind was racing. Every whispered conversation, every secretive glance, every late-night text, they all started to make sense. And in that moment, I realized the betrayal wasn't just hers. Someone close to her was helping hide it. I just didn't know who. But I was about to find out. The day before the wedding, I decided to take a walk to clear my head. But even as I wandered aimlessly through the streets, my mind kept returning to her phone, to Emma's words, and to the uneasy feeling in my gut. I knew something was terribly wrong, but I had no proof. Yet. That evening, while helping her pack her final touches for the honeymoon, I noticed her engagement ring. It gleamed under the soft light of our bedroom, but something about it felt different. I picked it up and examined it closely. And then I saw it, a tiny engraving on the inside, one I hadn't noticed before. It wasn't our initials. It wasn't the date we met. It was something else. Initials that didn't belong to me. I froze. My hands trembled as I traced the letters. Who is this?" I whispered under my breath. She must have heard me because she turned around instantly, her eyes wide. "What are you looking at?" she asked, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I swallowed my fear. "This engraving. It's not mine." Her face flickered with a flash of panic, and for the first time, she faltered. It's nothing. Just an old friend," she stammered. But I knew better. The ring, the one symbol that was supposed to represent our love, our future, was a lie. A betrayal hiding in plain sight. At that moment, I realized the entire wedding, the perfect life I thought we were building, might be nothing but a carefully constructed facade. And then I remembered the messages, Emma's slip, the whispers from her cousin. Everything was pointing to a truth I wasn't ready to face. The question that haunted me was simple but terrifying: how deep does her betrayal really go? The night before the wedding should have been filled with excitement, laughter, and last-minute preparations. Instead, I spent it tossing and turning, haunted by the thought of the messages, the engraving, and Emma's ominous slip. My mind refused to rest. I decided to take a walk outside to clear my head. The streets were quiet, almost eerily so, and every shadow seemed to whisper secrets. And then I saw them, two figures across the park, embracing in a way that made my stomach turn. One of them was unmistakably her. I froze, hidden behind a tree, watching in disbelief. This wasn't just a text flirtation or harmless flirting. This was real. Her body pressed against someone else's, laughing softly in a way she never laughed with me. I wanted to scream, to confront her right there. But I stayed silent. I had to be sure, had to catch more than a fleeting moment. When they parted, she slipped into a nearby car, the driver giving her a knowing nod. My heart sank. My fiancée, the woman I was supposed to marry in less than 24 hours, had a secret life I never could have imagined. I returned home in a daze, feeling betrayed, confused, and furious all at once. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I just stared at the ceiling, replaying every memory, every word, every smile. How many of them had been lies? And then, as if fate wanted to twist the knife further, I received a text from Emma, "Don't ruin tomorrow. Just let it happen. You'll see soon enough." I didn't know what she meant by that, but I knew one thing: the wedding wasn't going to go as planned. And the truth I dreaded the most was still waiting for me, hidden in plain sight. The morning of the wedding arrived, and I forced myself to act normal, even smiling at the mirror as I straightened my tie. But inside, my world was collapsing. I knew I couldn't go on pretending everything was fine. I needed answers. While she was in the bathroom, I took a deep breath and picked up her phone. It was unlocked, almost as if fate itself had guided me. The moment I scrolled through her messages, my stomach twisted into knots. There it was, the evidence I had feared, yet desperately needed. Explicit messages, pictures, and even plans for secret meetings, all pointing to a relationship I had never imagined. The person on the other end wasn't just a friend or a harmless fling, it was someone close, someone who knew exactly how to stay hidden until now. The more I read, the angrier and more betrayed I felt. How long had this been going on? How many nights had she whispered lies while I believed her? Every memory of our time together felt tainted, every promise meaningless. I couldn't hold it in. My hands were shaking, my chest tight. The wedding that was supposed to be the happiest day of my life was now the day I would uncover the full extent of her betrayal. And then, just as I was about to confront her, a notification popped up, a new message from Emma: "Everything is ready. Tonight will be unforgettable." My heart pounded. Unforgettable? In the worst way possible. I had the proof. I had the knowledge. But now came the hardest part, deciding how to confront her without losing control. And little did I know, the people I trusted most were about to betray me in ways I never could have imagined. As the wedding guests began arriving, I tried to act calm, hiding the storm raging inside me. But then something, or someone, made my blood run cold. One of the attendees, a distant cousin I barely knew, approached me with a nervous smile. He didn't greet me warmly. Instead, he leaned in slightly and whispered, "I know what she's been hiding. Be careful today." My heart skipped a beat. What? How could he know? I tried to respond casually, brushing it off with a laugh. "Relax, it's just a wedding, everything's fine." But his eyes didn't lie. There was fear there, urgency. And just like that, I realized I wasn't the only one who knew something was wrong. Someone else had figured it out. As I glanced around the crowd, I noticed subtle glances, whispers, and exchanged smirks that didn't reach their eyes. People I trusted, people who had promised to be there for us, were hiding something, or worse, watching it all unfold. I began piecing things together. The whispers at the bachelorette party, Emma's cryptic messages, the texts on her phone, and now this cousin. Everything pointed to a web of secrets carefully hidden beneath the surface. I felt trapped, like a chess piece in a game I didn't know I was playing. Every decision I made today could trigger a catastrophe, and with the wedding only hours away, time was running out. The crushing question echoed in my mind: if so many people know, who can I really trust? And just when I thought the day couldn't get any worse, the first real shock came, right as the ceremony was about to begin. The church was packed, the music swelled, and everyone was waiting for the moment that should have been the happiest of my life. I stood at the altar, trying to appear calm, but my mind was racing. Every smile from the guests felt like a latch, every whispered comment a reminder of the truth I had uncovered. Then, just as the music shifted and the doors were about to open, a commotion erupted near the back. Emma was whispering frantically to one of the bridesmaids, her eyes scanning the room as if searching for someone. I knew in that instant that the secret was about to explode. My heart pounded as my fiancée entered, radiant and smiling, completely unaware, or pretending to be, that her world was about to crumble. I clenched my fists under my jacket, trying to steady my shaking hands. And then it happened. A text popped up on her phone, left on the altar table by accident, flashing the name of the other person she had been seeing. The words were clear, undeniable: "Can't wait to be with you tonight. Don't let him ruin it." Gasps rippled through the crowd. A few guests whispered to each other, and I could see the panic on her face. She froze, caught in the act, the perfect image she had crafted unraveling in front of everyone. I felt a mix of fury and disbelief. How had it come to this? The day that was supposed to be ours, the celebration of our love, was now a stage for betrayal. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying: the wedding might not happen at all, not because of logistics, not because of nerves, but because the truth had finally been exposed. I had a choice to make: confront her here, in front of everyone, or keep quiet and let the nightmare continue. And my choice would change everything. The tension in the church was unbearable. Everyone waited, breathless, as I stood frozen at the altar. My fiancé's face was pale, eyes wide with panic, as the secret she had hidden for months hung in the air like a storm cloud ready to break. Then, the most shocking moment happened. Out of nowhere, the person she had been secretly seeing stepped forward from the crowd. A man I didn't recognize at first, confident, smirking, as if he had been waiting for this exact moment. And then, in front of all our friends and family, he kissed her. Time seemed to stop. Gasps echoed through the hall. Chairs scraped against the floor. Some guests covered their mouths in horror. The wedding I had dreamed of since childhood had transformed into a scene from a nightmare. I could feel my heart shattering. The betrayal, the lies, every secret, every stolen moment, it all came crashing down in one devastating instant. My fiancée pulled away, finally realizing she had been caught. Her eyes met mine, filled with panic and shame. I didn't know whether to scream, to cry, or to walk out and never look back. My mind raced through the months of deception, the late-night texts, Emma's warnings, the engraved ring. Everything pointed to the fact that I had been living a lie. And yet, even in that moment of ultimate humiliation, I noticed the reactions of others. Some were whispering about the scandal, others were trying to comfort me. I realized that the betrayal wasn't just personal, it was public, and there was no way to hide from it. I had to act fast. I needed to decide: confront her now, right here in front of everyone, or let her try to explain herself. But whatever choice I made, the truth had already won. The ceremony ended in stunned silence, and the reception was meant to distract everyone from the chaos, but it couldn't. The whispers had already spread through the crowd like wildfire. My fiancée tried to plaster a smile on her face, but it didn't reach her eyes. Everyone knew. As we entered the reception hall, guests avoided her gaze, some even snickering quietly. The man from earlier, her secret lover, had disappeared, leaving her exposed and vulnerable. I could feel the tension slicing through the air like a knife. The DJ attempted to play the first dance music, but the mood was shattered. I watched as her closest friends hesitated, some shaking their heads, others glaring at her with a mix of disappointment and anger. This wasn't a celebration anymore, it was a trial by public opinion. At one point, I walked up to her in front of everyone, my heart racing. "Do you have anything to say for yourself?" I asked quietly, but loud enough for nearby guests to hear. Her lips trembled. She opened her mouth, then closed it. The silence was deafening. No excuses, no apologies, just the weight of her betrayal hanging in the air. It was the most humiliating moment of her life. And yet, despite my anger, I felt a strange sense of relief. The truth was finally out. No more secrets, no more lies. And the whispers grew louder: how could she do this on her wedding day? Was he ever truly happy with her? Everyone had an opinion, and the humiliation was complete. But the story wasn't over yet. The people I thought were allies, her family, were about to turn the tide of judgment in ways I never expected. Just when I thought the public humiliation couldn't get worse, her own family made it unbearable. Her parents, who had smiled and praised her throughout the planning, suddenly exchanged sharp, accusatory glances. Her mother's eyes filled with tears, not the kind of tears I expected, but ones of anger and disappointment. She knew this was wrong, her father whispered harshly to someone nearby. And she did it anyway. Her siblings avoided her gaze completely, shaking their heads with a mixture of disbelief and shame. Cousins and aunts whispered in corners, all aware of the betrayal, all silently judging. It was as if the entire family had turned on her overnight. She tried to approach me, pleading quietly, "Please. I can explain." But I couldn't listen. Every word she had ever told me that I had trusted now sounded like a lie. I realized that this wasn't just about a secret affair. It was about the web of deceit she had spun around everyone she cared about. Even her friends, who had once been her allies, started distancing themselves. Emma, the maid of honor who had enabled everything, avoided eye contact, her earlier smugness replaced with unease. It was in that moment I understood just how far her betrayal had reached. The very people who were supposed to support her were now silently condemning her, and there was no way to salvage her reputation that day. And yet, despite the chaos, I felt a strange calm. Justice, or at least the consequences of truth, was unfolding naturally. Little did she know, the ultimate reckoning was still ahead, and my own plan for revenge was just beginning. By the time the reception ended, I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to let months of betrayal and lies go unpunished. But I didn't need to yell, I didn't need a scene. Her downfall would be quieter, sharper, and far more effective. I contacted a few close friends who had been silent witnesses to her lies, showing them screenshots and proof I had gathered over the past week. They were shocked, but most importantly, they were on my side. Within hours, her reputation, carefully crafted over years, began to crumble in whispers and private conversations. I also made sure the wedding photographer had captured the crucial moments: Emma's smirk, her lover's appearance, my fiancé's panic. Those photos, meant to be memories of happiness, became undeniable evidence of betrayal. By the next morning, the story had spread among our circles like wildfire. I didn't confront her directly after that. I simply walked away from the wedding with my dignity intact, leaving her to face the chaos she had created. Invitations to events, family gatherings, and even close friends began to vanish from her life. I felt a strange sense of satisfaction, not from cruelty, but from the truth finally being acknowledged. People saw her for who she truly was, and she had no one to blame but herself. And as I walked away, I realized something powerful: revenge didn't have to be dramatic. Sometimes, the most effective revenge is letting the consequences of one's actions unfold naturally, leaving no room for denial or excuses. But the story wasn't completely over. The final lesson, the one that would haunt her forever, was still to come. Weeks after the disastrous wedding, life began to settle, but in a way I never expected. My fiancée's secrets had been exposed, her reputation shattered, and her carefully constructed world collapsed around her. The friends who had once supported her distanced themselves, and her family's disappointment was impossible to ignore. I, on the other hand, found a strange sense of closure. The betrayal had hurt me deeply, but exposing the truth, letting the world see the real her, gave me power I hadn't felt in months. I realized that no matter how much someone tries to hide their actions, the truth has a way of surfacing. I also learned a harsh lesson about trust and intuition. I had ignored the early signs, dismissed my gut feelings, and almost let myself be blindsided completely. Trust is sacred, and once it's broken, it changes everything. As for her, she had to rebuild her life from scratch. Invitations were rescinded, friendships faded, and she faced a community that no longer held any illusions about her. The betrayal she had tried to hide was now her reality, and she had no one to blame but herself. And me? I moved forward with caution, but also with wisdom. I learned to trust my instincts, value honesty above all, and never allow someone to manipulate or deceive me again. Life goes on, and sometimes, karma delivers lessons in the harshest, but most unforgettable, ways. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and stay tuned for the next drama.